We're at the heart of the financial district, right outside Broad Street Station, and it's at this odd terminal that will start secrets of the J line. So, Broad Street, the terminal that was never built as one. Tracks do go south from here, and they merge with the R line, entering Court Street Station. This connection was used as late as 2010 for rush hour M train service. Because of this, it ends up being the only regular terminal in the system to use side platforms. There's also a passageway outside of fare control that'll take you to Wall Street Station on the 4 and the 5. Another weird thing about this station is how unusually wide the platforms are. Though sometimes some of it is gated before fare control. Of course, you're able to cross over here, but the mezzanine weirdly uses the same tiles as the platform level, even having Broad Street signage, unusual for a mezzanine. The tile band itself has this interesting pattern to it. However, it wasn't always like this, as just like at 8th Avenue on the L train, this station once had I&D tiling. Next stop, Fulton Street, was also like this, the third and final BMT station to once have I&D tiling. Nowadays, its tiling is similar to Broad Street. Fulton Street has two side platforms stacked on top of each other, with the I&D 8th Avenue line passing in the middle. This is the reason why the A and C platforms are used as a transfer passage here. It's also why this station can sometimes be a little confusing to navigate. There's even this quartet of signs by the Brooklyn-bound platform. With the Fulton Center project, the I&D tiling is gone from the mezzanine, and instead there are the white bricks and the LED lights. Also here are the glass doors that you have to go through to get to the 4 and 5 trains and the new exit. Also on the walls are these screens, but let's go to the exit-only exit accessed from the J train platform. And it's another instance where the tiling changes from the typical subway tiles. While you may have noticed that every single sign in the system that mentions the 9/11 memorial has special text, that's about all from Fulton Street Station, besides the random wall extrusions. Next stop is the overly large Chambers Street. This station is notably dirty, though it did get touched up a bit in recent years. The large size comes from the fact that this station used to be a much more important station, with this being the terminating point of many BMT services before the Broadway line. There's even a long disc-use connection which heads back around to the Manhattan Bridge. At the southern end, the center platform acts like the platform at DeKalb Avenue, splitting into two heights in preparation for Fulton Street. Of course, there are 5 platforms in total, only the outer 2 and the middle one are abandoned. The northbound outer platform is not entirely blocked, and you can see a few things like this staircase. There's also this artwork of the municipal building. Unlike that, the southbound side platform is completely blocked with 60s tiles. Also there is this extremely thick column. With all that's here, it's easy to forget that this station connects with Brooklyn Bridge City Hall on the IRT Lexington Avenue line. But before the mezzanine, there's the overpass, which allows for some cool balcony views. In the middle, it goes a couple steps down for some reason. The mezzanine isn't looking much better compared to the platforms. There's also a bunch of long ramps used to make this station accessible. They have these glass panel walls, which look very out of place at this station. All this making for a large mezzanine for a very large station. Don't admire the view all day as we head to the next stop, Canal Street. It's a singular island platform. However, at this station and the next stop, Bowery, there is a second island platform left abandoned. Until the early 2000s, both platforms were used, with one track on each platform being abandoned. This layout was soon simplified to how we know it today. The gap that lets you see the platform is boarded up, and that wall does not have the red and white stripe, unlike the other wall. Canal Street is perhaps the cleanest looking station on the Nassau Street line, and its columns have a metal trim and these nice snaking tiles. Its tile band is generally similar to most stations on the Nassau Street line, however, it's darker colored. This station is also a notable transfer point with the N, Q, R, W, and 6 trains, and on the Nassau line's own mezzanine, you have a grate at the bottom of the wall that lets you see down onto the track. Next up is the tall-ceilinged Bowery station, which has this abandoned exit. Its dark red columns are unique for getting thicker at the bottom, and you can also see how dirty this station is by looking at the walls. And at the walls, you can also see the boarded up holes again, with an abandoned platform at the other side. Bowery is also the only station on the Nassau Street line to have an escalator. There's also the tile work to admire, and while every Nassau line station has that same motif, the tile work differs at every station. Thanks to its high ceilings, you're able to get some vantage point shots from here, and we head on to the next stop, Delancey-Essex Streets. It's here where we meet the M train, and the southbound platform is an island platform, but what trains run on which tracks swap depending on if it's a weekday or a weekend. On the weekdays, the M uses the outer track while the J and Z uses the inner track, but it's swapped on the weekends since the M train has to terminate here. This is our last station in Manhattan, and right before the Williamsburg Bridge, which actually used to run trolleys. In fact, there's actually a huge trolley terminal right here at Essex Street Station, visible from the southbound platform. There's also, on the southbound platform, a staircase that's abandoned and leads you to the trolley terminal area. Plans exist to turn it into a sort of public space, but they haven't gone through yet. It's here at the eastern end of the platform where you can see trains heading on and off the bridge, and it's a very nice vantage point for rail fanning. Then there's the singular side platform for Forest Hills and Broad Street bound trains. The view of the bridge-bound platform is partially blocked at the western end of the platform, and you can also see these little E's. There's also tiled signage on the side platform. There are even these truss columns. Essex Street is generally a great place to rail fan, but we're continuing on the Williamsburg Bridge and heading to Marcy Avenue Station. Before that, let's just admire the views of the skyline. Past the bridge, Marcy Avenue Station, and heading to the eastern end of the platform, you'll find that it's directly above the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. There's the house-like roof at the main exit, and the mezzanine is at platform level. There's also this artwork, but we head on to the next stop. Now, during the weekdays, the J train runs peak direction express between Marcy Avenue and Myrtle Avenue. So, on a weekday, you'll get to fly by Hewes Street, Lorimer Street, and Flushing Avenue stations. But it's no matter, so we'll talk about these stations anyways. Starting at Hewes Street, these three stations are some of the very few elevated stations that use a unique vertical panel wall type. Right as we exit Hewes Street, there's another quirk of these three stations, that being the very compact exits. There are only 2 turnstiles, and they need to be staggered in order to fit the emergency exit. Consequently, the emergency exit isn't that easy to spot head-on, making it a little less safe. Between Hewes and Lorimer Street stations is the unconnected Broadway station, part of the G train. Knowing where to look, it's easy to spot the entrance. There is limited signage to indicate this transfer, but when walking on the north side of Broadway, between Broadway itself and Lorimer Street, you'll see this sign, which also has a brown M on it. Past that ground-level detour, we get to Lorimer Street itself, where there's nothing much different from Hewes Street. So, Flushing Avenue, the better station of the three, mainly due to the fact that it has an elevator. This makes the exterior look a bit nice and polished. Now, this station does have a traditional elevated mezzanine, but there's also the compact entrance once again. But here, you can see that the compact entrance was once a full mezzanine, with this abandoned part of the station. You can also see through to the other side from here. Flushing Avenue happens to be the closest station to the Woodhaven Medical Center, but we head on to Myrtle Avenue, where the express run comes to an end. With a lot to unpack, we're heading right in, with the abandoned upper level. It's where the western portion of the Myrtle Avenue Elevated used to run, and from platform level, you can look up the staircases. There are also these lights to brighten up the area under the Elevated. There are other stuff here, like the thin columns, and this very blank board showing the station name. The middle track is actually used by a lot of services, J and Z trains in the peak direction, and M trains on the weekends and late nights. It also gives the most numbers on a single stop marker in the system. The other thing this is more confusing signage, just like at Essex, as the M and J trains once again will swap their tracks depending if it's a weekend or weekday. Heading towards the exit, there's an underpass, which is mainly bounded by fences. And interestingly, you have to go up a few stairs when exiting. At the mezzanine, you can see that it's uniquely painted red. Not really much else like this in the system. The next station, hard to spell and pronounce, is Kosciuszko Street Station. Of course, everyone loves this station for its very weird name, and Kosciuszko Street is a real thing. There is stuff here, like this station being one of the few to have the platform facade be this orange color, and you can find one of the various abandoned exits along the J here. You can even see down right to Kosciuszko Street, as alluded to earlier. And another station with an abandoned exit, Halsey Street. It may not seem too different from Kosciuszko Street at first, but there is this nice art piece, seen on the platform. Just like at Delancey Avenue on the L train, you get a view of some interesting looking buildings. Our next station is a big one, as we head into round 2 of Broadway Junction. Head to the western end if you want to avoid the insane part of the station, and it's actually quite tranquil. The highlight over here is the signal room, which can definitely use some cleaning on the outside. But east along the platform we go, and you can actually see, looking down from the Manhattan-bound platform, East New York Yard. There's also a track that connects East New York Yard to just west of Broadway Junction on the J train, and you can sometimes see a train go across it. Just like how back in the L train video we can see J train from the L train platforms, now it's time to look up and see L trains from the J train platforms. Also in this area is a strange gated-off staircase. There's also this interesting style of signage. There's also the middle track, which usually sees no service, but if a train's terminating here, or if it's entering service here, it'll use it. Having fully migrated to the eastern end of the platform at this point, you can see the connection to the L train, the only one in the system that's used. Theoretically, and it has happened before, a J train can go via the L line to Canarsie by using this track. The only mezzanine is located above the J and Z trains. It's got a nice design with this glass roof. You can also find this vibrant tile work, and right here we're in the junction of Broadway Junction, as we can choose to go to all lines here. Heading down the escalator for a bonus fact, and you can see the new L train departure screens right next to the covered up old one. And our first stop past Broadway Junction, Alabama Avenue, and here we can get an eastward view of the complex junction. It's even possible to still see the L train from here, though quite far away at this point. You can also see the ramp structure for the never-built express track, which would have gone on its own high level. Since that never happened, the line between Broadway Junction and Crescent Street only has 2 tracks, with a space in the middle where you'd think a third track would be. And consequentially, all stations on this segment are island platforms. And on the topic of platforms, doors won't open at the far west end, where the curve immediately begins, the gap being apparent. And the other noteworthy thing with the island platform stations is the signage, which oddly has green wooden panels. Another thing is that if you look northward, you'll see the East New York Bus Depot right in view. So with these island platform stations, all of them have an exit at one of the extreme ends, except for Van Siclen Avenue. Looking south from the center of the platform, you can see the mezzanine, and it's a rare instance where the mezzanine is not under the tracks or platforms. This is generally a weird mezzanine, though the interior does look nice. And back on the platform, there's a short fence, which prevents people from walking on top of it. The passageway under the tracks also has a bit of a different design to it, especially with those lights. Now, platform level has these unusually small signs, which will tell you the destination of each track. Unlike Alabama Avenue's green board, the signage is propped up by some beautiful stained glass artwork. And an additional oddity with these island platform stations are the zebra boards, which are just propped up out in the open. Past that, there's nothing much special regarding these island platform stations, so as we leave Crescent Street, we head into a very tight S-curve, which also has the Crescent Street layout. Speeds between Crescent Street and Cypress Hills are slow due to the sharpness and age of the S-curve. And past the bottleneck, we head into Cypress Hills Station. Now, due to the delayed nature of this video, this was filmed when the westbound platform at Cypress Hills was under renovation. 85th Street Forest Parkway was also like this too. The good news is that those were the last renovations needed for this portion of the line, and we get to see the brand new looking eastbound platform. Now there's this box which appears at many other stations, but for some reason at Cypress Hills, it's painted lime green, making it stick out way too much. Paying our attention back to the S-curve, you can see that Cypress Hills is a pretty good fanning spot. And, so you'd think, our last station in Brooklyn. For all intents and purposes, 75th Street-Elderts Lane is a Queens station. The exits are in Queens, and 95% of the platform is also in Queens. However, there's 5% of the platform that's actually in Brooklyn, due to the border passing through this station. And despite not being obvious in any capacity, you can head to the west end of the station to be in Brooklyn. Now there's actually a twist to this, in that there used to be an exit onto the namesake Elderts Lane, which was quite literally on the border. However, the mezzanine got used for drugs and prostitution more than actual commuting, so it got closed, and then people still went into it anyways, so it was completely demolished. This guideway is the only remaining evidence. Then 85th Street Forest Parkway. Just like Cypress Hills at the time of filming, this station had one platform under renovation and one brand new looking platform. But that lime green box from Cypress Hills is nowhere to be found. And then Woodhaven Blvd, a transfer point for the first time in a while. The Q52 and Q53 select buses are back. Incidentally, all of the interesting things are on street level. There are the shiny new elevators and the shiny bottom of the mezzanine, which is weird. Even weirder is that it looks unfinished at some parts. Now this can be seen at other stations along the Cross Bay Woodhaven corridor, but the fences at the dedicated bus platforms show the shape of a man riding a horse. The Cross Bay Woodhaven corridor is an interesting place to fan, with buses getting decent speeds here. We next pass 104th Street, which used to be called 102nd Street, 104th Streets, which used to be called 102nd Street. The name has simply shifted over time. The story of the third track on this portion of the line is a bit inconsistent, but we can see it start up again at 111th Street, and it's used as a storage track. 111th Street can be added to the list of stations with a gentle curve. And with the skip stop madness, you have this sign that specifically mentions 121st Street as the station J trains will not stop at eastbound in the PM rush. There's also this strange art piece, which is a mesh face in the wall. On street level, you can see it stick out, and on platform level, it's inverted. Finally, the east end of the platform allows you to see how the storage track is connected. The next stop is 121st Street, but between 111th and 121st Streets, you can see an unexpected remnant. The Long Island Railroad's lower Montauk branch passes below us, and you can see the platform for the abandoned Richmond Hill Station. It's a very looked-over instance of an abandoned platform right in plain sight. But with that, we head into the final elevated station, 121st Street. But it wasn't always a return back underground. The line used to go elevated right through the heart of Jamaica and all the way to 168th Street. However, the opening of the Archer Avenue line led to this L's demolition. The new tunnel portal was built right beside the Long Island Railroad by Boland's Landing, where you're able to see trains passing or in storage. But all elevateds must come to an end as we enter the penultimate station, Sutphin Blvd-JFK Airport. E trains on the upper level, J and Z trains on the lower level. There isn't actually any track connections between the E and the J and Z. The platform starts off pretty thin at the western end, but with a whiplash of modernity comes a lot to cover. There's this information thing, and note the ceilings aren't as high as the ones on the E train platform, since of course we're on the lower level. The main walls of the platform are a nice off-white tile color. There are the columns with a unique metal-like texture, and the boxy lights with the signs on them on either side. Then to the center of the platform where all the action is, and you can see the big modern staircase that goes up to the E train and the mezzanine. And one of the best parts of this station is the orange and red tiling everywhere. Sometimes yellow gets into the mix, but the grandest usage of the tiles is this big Sutphin mosaic. Other places with apparent color include the space between the E and J and Z platforms, which has this dark red, and also some of the exits, which have a white and scarlet pattern. The elephant in the room is that this is an airport station, which means a lot of tourists, suitcases, and all of that. As a result, it was one of the very first stations to get the new experimental fare gates. Even street level is busy, with an immense amount of buses that go through this very intersection, notably the Q44 Select bus. And here we are, the final station of today, Jamaica Center. Here, the main color of tiles is yellow. It nicely matches with the railings at the ends of the platform, but it's pretty agreeable that this station is one of the grandest in the system. Once again, high ceilings on the E train platform, with a more dungeon-like feeling on the J and Z platform. Note that the tracks continue eastward, actually for quite a bit for the E train side. Once again, it's the unbuilt I&D second system. But one could consider the Archer Avenue line, along with the 63rd and 2nd Avenue lines, as the I&D second system we did get. However, we can't watch trains idling on the platform all day, so up to the mezzanine. Here's the top of the escalators, and the yellow tiles in full force. There's a whole brick wall with a metal trim, something you'd only see in a post-war styled station like Parsons Archer. And the station name is a bit weird, Jamaica Center Parsons Archer, the only time you get a slash in the station name. You can also find the one column here that's not colored yellow. And now outside of fare control, where you can see a lit up sign pointing to the telephones, obviously discontinued. But here's another cool aspect. The zones before and after paying the fare are not separated by any fence like you see in most stations, but instead these glass panels. There's also this welcome to the subway sign. The far walls have more of a cinder block thing going on, and there are also some weird signs here, especially this north side of Archer Avenue one. Up an escalator once more, to the really nice entrance at the bus bays, which actually have a name, Teardrop Canopy. Find the out-of-date signage due to the Queens Bus redesign, but there truly are a big selection of routes here. And that big wall is part of the Long Island Railroad viaduct. Pretty sure we're near that abandoned Union Hall Street station, which doesn't actually have remnants, but it's there. It is a good thing this place has bus lanes, and back at the entrance, there's a nice pillar with the green MTA globe. Couple more things back underground, you're able to see down into the E-train platform with this balcony, and then outside of fare control you have this weird passageway that snakes around and has slanted walls. There's even an entrance with these gates, which can individually close either the staircase or the escalator. And back on the surface for a depiction of what the area looked like over a century ago. Unfortunately, I think that text on the house really was there. But that's about it for this Blvd Aero Station, and for Secrets of the J-Lock.